So, hello everyone. I am Neeta Aneja and I'm the founder of Trends Literature Series. And as they say that reading lets you travel without moving your feet. So, we have today with us the author of the much talked about book, Onam in a Nightie, the stories of in Kerala quarantine. And we have with us, as I just mentioned, Anjana Menon. About the book, it's definitely a rollicking read and the second most gifted travel book on Amazon right now. The book definitely depicts the true character of the God's own country, Kerala, with definitely a healthy dose of humor, full of surprises, and as Sohail said, quirky and definitely sardonic. So, welcome Anjana on our 86th episode. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be joining you on the show.
Thank you. And Anjana, as you said in the book that you've been really wrestling with words for as long as you remember. You've been a journalist. You're the founder, editor of the I used to read this quite often, Mint, author, content strategist, and a columnist. And out with your debut creative nonfiction book, Onam in a Nightie. And immediately, I would say months after you've already given a bestseller, which is What's Your Story? So how does it feel to be so much accomplished as a writer?
Well, I'm a journalist by training. So I think for the longest time, I've only regarded it as a profession, like people are doctors or they're engineers. I'm just a writer by training. So, and it's great if people like what I write. That's a bonus. But really my devotion is to use and use them as best as I can.
Lovely. And Onam in a Nightie, the title of the book is immediately triggering. It triggers you to definitely buy the book in the first place.
Right.
And I'm sure you've been asked this question a couple of times earlier, but I'll still go ahead and ask you. So how come this title of the book so interesting? A lot of people have got back to me saying that, wonderful, this is Onam in a Nightie, must be great. So already you set the ball rolling, as I said.
So yes, I have to confess this wasn't the working title of the book. The working title was something different. It was definitely a very tame title. But once I finished the manuscript and started reading back, one of the things that occurred to me is that the book turned out funnier than I expected.
Yes.
Like you mentioned, it's got healthy doses of humor, and that's constant feedback that I get from readers. In fact, some have come back and said, you should be a stand-up comic, or you should be sort of, collaborate.
Very subtly portrayed, yeah.
You should be collaborating with a stand-up comic on this book. So I think once I stepped back, I could see that there is humor in the book, and I just at that point of time felt that the working title didn't sort of communicate that humor really well. And so I started brainstorming with friends, and one of them, who kind of just about knew that I was writing a book but didn't know much more than that, asked me, what my favorite chapters in the book are. And I mentioned that there is this chapter, Onam in a Nightie. And then he looked at me and said, and can you tell me why that's not the title of your book? It's staring you in the face. And so that was really the story behind the title. And of course, when I suggested it to the publishers, they said, no, it totally works because it communicates that, two things about Kerala. One, of course, Onam, it's a festival that's associated with Kerala. The Nightie is kind of a ubiquitous garment here now. And it then captures, the tone of the book, which is humorous, and the place that the book is set in, which is Kerala.
And apparently the cover of the book and the illustrations inside have been making a lot of news because, as you told me earlier, when I spoke to you, that you've really worked on it. So definitely, a lot of my readers and a lot of people who come on our platform always like to know the evolving of the book. Like, how did the cover come out? And especially in your case, because it is so attractive. And how did those little illustrations running all through the book, people who would read it subsequently after this conversation or read it, have noticed this. So I'd like to talk about it.
Thank you so much for that. So again, this was not the original cover of the book. I had been shown 3 covers for the book, and they were nice covers, but I just felt that the cover should be something different. It's like the instinct of an author. And I think when you write a book, you tend to see the book as your child or baby, and you want everything to work out perfectly for the book. And funnily enough, at the time that I was quarantining and I was writing this book, which was in 2020, towards the second half of 2020, I'd seen this newspaper article, which is about a young child prodigy, like an artist, who had done this painting on mothers. And it was a beautiful painting, which the Kerala government had taken and put as the cover of its gender budget for that year. So, the newspaper had carried an article on the cover and the artist. And as it happened, he was this young kid who lived in Thrissur, not too far from me, probably like a 10-15 minute drive from where my parents' home. And he had drawn that painting called Mothers when he was 9 years old, and it had won a lot of international awards. It basically chronicled all the work that women do, the work that we never get acknowledged for, work inside the house, outside the house, taking care of people, taking care of families, of children. And what struck me was that a 9-year-old boy had the sensibility that is missing in adults. And that kind of stayed with me. And when I looked at the cover, I thought, well, why don't I ask if he can do the cover? Because he will probably bring something new to the cover. And I managed to then get in touch with him. And he's about 15 or 16 now. And I was really lucky that he agreed. He took it up and said, well, I've never done this kind of a book cover before, but let's give it a shot. And so here you have it, the cover, which everyone likes, and his amazing illustrations.
What a talented young chap, I must say, and how thoughtful of you to bring out his talent, more to the public. And this is what is really required, when you grow and you're growing other people also with you. That's very important. So, talking about the book, I'm sure it's been inspirational for you, and I'm sure it will also inspire others to maybe engage in the kind of writing that you've done. So, but what has been your main inspiration behind writing this book, and what would you really like the readers to know about the process of writing, maybe which can really kind of, people who've not read the book till now, maybe it'll kind of really motivate them and encourage them. Yeah.
So I think for me, what the book did for me was it uplifted me. Because life had slowed down significantly in the lockdown during the Corona period. I mean, the last 2 years have been very different to, say, even the last month, when things have started opening up and we're going out more and we're spending, we're less fearful, so to speak. And so when you're trapped in a situation where things look fairly gloomy, you don't know if there is an end in sight and when it will be, you don't know how this thing is going to turn out. I think the tendency is to, kind of go into a little hole and work yourself into a tiz. And the book did quite the opposite for me. Writing it did quite the opposite for me. For the first time, I found that I had time to pause, to look around me and to observe things. And then when you observe them closely, because the small things can be funny, they can be uplifting, you can see the goodness in stuff, which you previously really didn't have the time to observe and think about. So I think for me personally, the book was, it sort of set me free from this frenzied pace of life. The slow living alternative threw up far more pleasant surprises than this fast track rat race that we're all sort of, we all feel caught up in. It's like there's a FOMO, right? I don't want to get left behind. But by getting left behind, the book brought me forward.
So, right. And what message or how do you feel the readers, why they should be reading the book? I mean, it's just for the readers who would probably be now going ahead and buying the book. So what, according to you, is the main point, the star attraction?
I think it's actually quite a few things. It's a book that's written with humor. There is a lot of tenderness and empathy in the book. it also takes us back to things that we've forgotten. For example, our childhood. Takes you back to childhood memories, what it was like. Those are the things that really we probably think of nostalgically, and we never get time to rewind. So I think to an extent that comes through in the book. Overall, almost everyone who's read the book has said to me that it made them smile. And I think that is huge, that readers feel that it made them smile.
So very right. And I read a quote which you have said somewhere, that we are so caught up with what's broken that we forget to celebrate what's working, right? And when I read your book, I definitely, as you said, definitely brought a smile on my face, and definitely I found it very, very positive. There is actually no ugliness in the book, right? So did you purposely leave out anything which could have negatively impacted? It was a decision that you really took that let it be very positive, or how did you kind of felt, and how do you feel that when people say that there is actually no ugliness in the book?
So it's not actually by design, to be honest. It's just that the book is very much about my experiences in Kerala over a very short period of time, probably a maximum of about 6 months, 5.5 months, technically, because I'd finished the book by December. And in a very peculiar time in history, God forbid, I hope there's never going to be a repeat of COVID, right? Where we all have to recalibrate so heavily. And it is a moment in history. And I think it's also a moment in history where we saw humanity come forward. We saw resilience in people. We saw that people regrouped as communities and were willing to help. And they understood that the really important things in life are, your health, your relationships, and so on. And I didn't encounter any of the ugliness, to be honest. I didn't encounter anything that was awkward or didn't sit well with me, because I think the environment was very different at that point in time. People were just saying, okay, let's put our heads together, put our heads down, and we will overcome this. And they were incredibly helpful. I mean, there's so many instances I've described in the book, where people have just been good Samaritans. And that's what I encountered in the book. And that way is quite honest to every, the things that were happening every day. You did, ask me a little while ago about the process of writing the book. Yes. It's quite different to the first book that I co-authored, yes. Where, there was a structure and I knew I had to write this every day to get to the end of the book. And, that was a collaborative process with 2 of my American colleagues. In this book, I just wrote everything as it happened on that day, so that it stayed fresh in my mind and I could capture that moment as vividly as possible. So it's also a highly descriptive book. And that's because the writing is, has been done almost an hour or 2 hours after the incident happened.
Yes, and it is very fresh, like Kerala, like God's own country. And I must say that unofficially, or rather, I'm sure, unofficially, you are definitely now a brand ambassador of Kerala tourism, because the way you've written down, people love Kerala, but through your book, it's such a visual treat, I must say. And you bring back so many memories of, if you've been to Kerala, you find all those little things in the book. And another thing, the underlying theme of your book, as you mentioned before in earlier conversations that I saw and everything, that it is the idea of identity and belongingness. So tell us from your perspective.
I have explored the theme of identity and belonging in the book. And I think to an extent, it's happened inadvertently, because I've actually never lived in Kerala. And I say this in the preface, that I was born and raised in Delhi. And for me, Kerala was really just a holiday destination. When I was young, I would come and visit my grandparents. And, some time ago, my parents retired here. And so as an adult, it's really just been to, visit them for, a few days at a go and so on. And I have kind of, to that extent, not identified myself as a Keralite, but I've also been trapped in 2 worlds, from a South Indian growing up in the North, which is how I'm perceived in Delhi, right? I've also talked about this in the book, the term Madrasi. that they'll look at you and they'll say, oh, are you a Madrasi? And, not sort of distinguishing between a Keralite and someone from Chennai, or it's just a loose term. And when I do visit Kerala, the first thing that I get asked when people meet me is, are you from outside Kerala?
Okay. All right. See.
So there is a constant struggle that I've faced. And, when I've lived in other countries, Singapore and London, again, in London, they don't see you as a Brit. In Singapore, they don't see you as a Singaporean. So this idea of wanting to belong and assimilate is something that has kind of stayed with me through my life, where I felt I'm here, but do I really belong? And that's something that I've explored in the book. How do I inch closer to belonging to a place? But also, I think at another level, it's a human conundrum. How do you belong? Like, do you want to belong to a certain group of people? Do you want to belong to a certain social strata? Do you want to belong to certain group of co-workers in your workplace? So if you look at life, do you want to belong to sometimes the family that you marry into? So there is a quest of belonging that's there, that permeates our everyday lives, but sometimes we just don't see it that way.
So right, and even in the end of the book, you mentioned that quarantined offered you a pause, even a welcome one, from things that keep us awake. Ambition, comparison, responsibility, bills, decisions, misgivings. That kind of sums it all to the way they've, this thing that we've talked about. So I have a lot of people in the interactive round, but I'd like to ask you 1-2 more questions from my side. That there are lovely characters in the book, true to life, beautiful, who made a difference in pandemic, impacted you. So who's been your favorite character in the book?
Well,
like to talk about?
I love all the characters in the book, which is why I've written about them. But I think my firm favorite is Shivankuti, because he was definitely a more frequent visitor, and I had more interactions with him than I had with others. And he's also in many ways a universal character. He's he's incredible because he's both unique and universal. He's universal because a lot of smaller towns have people like him, who are for listeners who don't know, Shivankuti is visiting caretaker at my parents' place. And a lot of places, smaller towns, have people like him who are so incredibly talented and skilled at everything that they do.
Yes.
So he can do anything that you ask him to. But at the same time, he sets the ground rules and he controls the narrative.
Yes.
Right? And he does that in such a clever, charming way, so much as, I would say, even a superior, not even an equal, because he's so multi-talented, and he has such a way about him. So for me, and he's got so many sides to his personality. There is the fun side, there is the wily side, there is, the cunning aspect to him. There are areas where you see that, Shivankuti and I have bonded. There's a deep empathy between us. Yeah. So for me, he is by far the most, I would say, compelling character, though I love all the characters I've written about.
No. Even the characterization, the way you've written about them, kind of makes you read about them more, and we would definitely like you to maybe write a sequel or something. Let us know what happens next. It is really nice. It's definitely a very, very honest book, but which is the biggest compliment you think you got on the book, which you will cherish forever, Always there's somebody who comes up and says, yes, this is what I felt about the book. This is what you've done to me as a writer.
So I think, one of the biggest compliments I got was actually from a lady in New York, an American lady, not Indian, not Indian origin, who wrote back and said, I wished your book would never end.
Oh yeah, my feelings too.
So I was quite, that it can appeal to not just, an audience in India, but it can appeal to a wider audience. I think that was a breakthrough for me because I'm not sure that I was writing for that audience.
No, definitely it has a universal appeal, and it takes you through so subtly, and definitely very, very engaging and honest read. Do you ever foresee maybe a movie coming out of this book? It is very visually written, I'm sure it'll find a director someday, maybe on OTT, or maybe as a travel book, and maybe a documentation on Kerala, something I'm sure it should find.
Well, it would be great if it does. A lot of people have actually said this to me. I hope you're talking to OTT platforms for the book, but quite honestly, I'm just thrilled that the book is getting the love it's getting, and my attitude to all of these things is what will be.
So very right. On this note, I will invite Dia. Dia, she's the co-founder of Trends Literature Series, and she wanted to ask you a question. Yes, Dia.
Hi. So first of all, congratulations on the book. I have actually started reading it and I have been loving it. So I had actually been following you on Instagram for some time, and I had been really impressed with your posts on social media. I mean, they were very well coordinated and just the right content to capture the reader's attention. So I wanted to ask you, what is the role of the author in the wider picture of marketing of the book? Does it end only at writing, or you have to be involved at every step?
I can speak for myself. I've been involved pretty much in everything. The creatives that you've seen on Instagram, we have done them in-house. I run a content strategy company, so we've done them in-house. I've been deeply involved in them. I just feel that the author knows the book the best, and book marketing is quite an uphill and tedious task. And if you can support the marketing divisions by being more involved, it's a huge bonus and help for them. So I do feel that it is a collaborative process, and you have to be involved in the book, and that's probably the best way to go.
That makes sense. I had actually been very fascinated by the posts, and I loved seeing them. Really popped out to me. I had a second question. So I believe you follow the motto, one has to be the CEO of your book. So could you tell us more about this and what your experience has been? Anything to add?
Well, this was told to me by the CEO of Amar Chitrakatha. So I cannot claim to be the person who coined this term. We were chatting once, and she's got huge expertise in marketing books. So she's the one who said to me, the only piece of advice I can ever give an author is be the CEO of your own book. And I think it's a brilliant piece of advice, because you realize that there is more to a book than writing a book. And every author's, of course, struggle is different. For me, writing the book was really the easiest part, because that came naturally to me. I've been a trained writer for 20 years. And so I didn't have any struggles whatsoever with writing the book. I would just sit down and the words would come out, and in an hour and a half, my chapter would be done. But having been told that prepared me for the fact that the journey doesn't end when you finish writing the book and you get the published book in your hand, right? That's only when the journey is begun, because the most important thing is to get your book to readers rather than treat it as a vanity project. You don't sort of write to say, okay, I've written a book. Ideally, you write so that your writing can reach people, and hopefully that they'll enjoy that writing and get something out of it. So I think marketing and seeing the book through to ensure that it reaches its natural readers, it's a very important step of the journey. And by being told you are the CEO of your book you kind of know that there is a start point to the journey and then there is an end point to the journey.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Looking forward to reading the rest of the book.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now we have Babita Batra. She's an ex-corporate and a very, very proud homemaker now. Yes, right. Babita. Please switch on your video.
Wait. Hi, Anjana.
Hi, Babita.
Wait. There's a problem. Wait. Yeah. My question is quite similar to what he asked. You've been an accomplished journalist and a writer. When I go, I generally don't pick up the books just like that. I read a review and then I go and pick up. But what do you think is the trigger point for the readers to pick up a book and buy it?
I do. There are two things that I usually typically do when I have to buy a book. One, I look for a recommendation from a peer, someone who has a similar taste in reading to mine. So it could be a friend who reads similar kinds of books or has recommended books to me in the past, and I've loved those books. So that for me is a key trigger, where someone says, hey, I read this book and I really liked it. And that makes me think, okay, if so-and-so likes the book, then there is something to it, because I value their, judgment. The second thing that I do for myself is I do read a few random pages of the book, which, now a lot of these digital sites allow you to do that, to see if the style of writing is something that will stay with me, will take me from page to page. Unfortunately, I'm hooked on to good writing. So even if it's described as a great book, but I can't sort of move from page to page because the writing holds me, then usually my tendency is to let it go.
Okay. Thank you so much.
We have Alka Khanna. She's a social entrepreneur and she's executive with Able Charities, which is an international NGO. Yes, Alka.
Yeah. How do I join? Start with it. Yeah.
Alka, please switch on your video.
Just how do I do it?
I'll move on.
I guess you could just ask even without the video if she has.
Yes, without the video, Alka, you can ask the question, please.
I just want to know what inspired you to write this book, and what is the audience you're looking for who will read this book, and what effect?
Okay, so I've mentioned this in my preface. I didn't start this as a book per se. I started it as really a journal because I was in Kerala during the quarantine, and I was, stuck on a floor on, the first floor of my parents' home because there was a room quarantine for visitors who were coming from outside the state. And so those 14 days, I just had two options, either to OD on Netflix, which I think we'd all done enough of given the time they'd spent at home, or do something else with, the skills I have. And so I started keeping a journal, and I started posting some of these posts on Facebook. And I have to be honest, I'm not a very active social media person because I'm somewhat a private person. So I suddenly had this flurry of messages, people messaging me on WhatsApp, sending me private messages saying, what is today's post? Why haven't you posted today? And then I realized that there is a huge interest. And this was from across the world. This was from, friends sitting in the US, in the UK, all the way down to Australia, all kinds of places. And on some days I would get badgered saying, we're waiting for the post. It's the first thing we check in the morning. And then, 2 or 3 friends who are close to me and who know that, I like writing, messaged me and said, we really think it's a book. You need to reconsider whether this is just journals and a post or it's a book. And so then I kind of paid a little bit more attention to what I was writing, I stopped posting on social media and I started keeping it as a private journal. And once I'd reached about 30,000 words or something, I showed it to the publisher, who agreed pretty much immediately. So that was the origin of the book. Who is a reader? I think it's very hard for an author to say, this is my reader. It's almost like saying, because, this is a different kind of book. It's a book that uplifts you. It's got a little bit of humor. It's creative nonfiction. It's not a fiction book. So it's really for anyone who's looking for those things, a little bit of slow life, humor, empathy, things that uplift them. And that can be anyone, really. So I can't say, oh, it's written for women or it's written for men or this is the age group. It's for anyone who's looking for a different pace of life and a slow window. One of the things that I have been told repeatedly, though, is that anyone who reads Arke Narayan will probably love your book because it's very much like a Malgudi Days.
Thank you, Alka. Next, we have Rashmi Razaida. She is an educator of German and English. She's also a singer. She's got quite a few songs that she's released. Yes, Rashmi. Yes. Hi, Rashmi.
Hi, Neeta. Thank you. Congratulations to you, Anjana.
Thank you.
For your for your baby. The title of the book is so much in line with we all identifying ourselves with it, especially in this lockdown, where we were all not dressed to go nowhere. My question is a little away from your theme. I mean, maybe, I haven't read your book. I would love to, and I will, I think. My question is a little away, probably. I just would like all Indians to have basic knowledge about the fact that a Malayali is different, an Andhraite, a Tamilian, and a Keralite. They are not to be clubbed as South Indians together. So what happens is all over the world, wherever you go, they say, oh, you're a South Indian. But then they should be given their individual due, their individual identity. This is what I feel. And I'm sure you've even mentioned it during the course of the whole thing. You've talked a little about it. So I just want to know, I want to ask you, how do you have had to explain yourself all the time to people that you're, what is your identity?
Well, yeah, when I'm overseas, I normally just say I'm an Indian. Like if someone in Britain or, Southeast Asia asks me, are you a local? Are you from here? I'll always say, no, I'm an Indian. In Delhi, well, people will ask me, expecting me to say that I'm a Keralite, but I'll always say I'm a Delhiite because I was born and raised there, and I speak Hindi just as well as anyone else does. In Kerala, I say I'm a Keralite raised in Delhi.
Okay.
So I think it's slightly different identities, but more or less identities that overlap.
So you don't mind it. I mean, I don't know if people do mind, clubbing them as South Indians, and normally in India people don't know, a Malayali is different, an Andhraite is different. I mean, the North Indians generally don't know.
It's really funny. Shashi Tharoor had a tweet out 2 days ago where he said that it is called Kerala, not Karela. And we're not God's own country. We're God's own country, right? So, so yeah, I do get that a lot. I do get things like, are you a Malayalam? Malayalam is a language. Malayali is...
Yes.
So I sort of always kind of subtly tell them that, that's a language we speak, but actually Malayali. Right. I think after a while you just, you sort of inure to it because it's so in the face and all the time. And you just sort of, you have to pick your battles wisely. So I always just gently tell them, like, Kerala, which is like squished to the side.
Which is pretty good. Which is pretty good, not starting a communal riot and not feeling whatever about it. And then another connecting question, it's a small one. While reading your profile, I just, you mentioned that you have a desire to visit Kyoto. Any good reason?
No, I said I wished I could live in Kyoto. I've been to Kyoto.
Okay. And why would you like to live there? I would like to, from the horse's mouth, I'd like to know your wish and desire. Why?
Because it is, it is just such a detail-oriented, perfectionist place that someone like me would be tremendously happy there.
Okay.
The attention to detail on everything is remarkable. It is just such a... I have great admiration for the Japanese.
Okay.
Because of their attention to detail and their diligence in everything. It can be the smallest of things. And I've had only the most remarkable experiences in Japan. I mean, this is not to say that there aren't two sides to every country, culture, race, and so on. But these are the two things that I find really remarkable: their attention to detail and the level of diligence and thought that goes into everything. It's remarkable. And for me, that's when I think Japan, those two things always come to mind. And of course, Kyoto has brilliant green spaces. I've also, I think I'm a bit of an emephilist. I like green cover flowers. I love Arashiyama. So that's my love of Kyoto.
Lovely.
Thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Anjana.
Thank you. Thank you, Rashmi, for taking our time. Thank you, Anjana. It's been a wonderful conversation. Any last words on the book that we missed out and you'd like to tell the readers? Yes.
I hope that more and more people enjoy the book and it brings them some joy. I mean, that's really the best thing that I could have ever done as a writer, is if someone turns around and says it made me smile. I think we all, would rather be happy than sad. So if the book does for them what it did for me, I'd be really delighted and over the moon.
And thank you, Anjana. Your book, Onam in a Nightie, definitely takes us to a place, as you've written, that one wishes stays the way it is forever. In these stories of hope and resilience from a midway Kerala town, the book is a visual delight. You get into the Kerala straight away, and you've written it beautifully. Many, many wishes for the book. I'm sure it is going to do as good as it is doing now, and even much better. Thank you for taking our time.
Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you to all the guests.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, HarperCollins and the team, for making this session possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Neeta.